The cherished traditions of this university are being overtaken right now by radical and extreme ideologies.
That was Representative Mike Johnson, the Louisiana congressman who many believe is the now outgoing Speaker of the House of Representatives, at a press conference Wednesday at Columbia University in New York City.
They place a target on the backs of Jewish students in the United States and here on this campus. A growing number of students have chanted in support of terrorists. They have chased down Jewish students. They have mocked them and reviled them. They have shouted racial epithets. They have screamed at those who bear the Star of David. Enjoy your free speech. They've told Jewish students who wear the Star of David to leave the country. And shamefully, some professors and faculty have joined the mobs.
Caleb Maupin is a journalist with the Moscow-based news organization RT. He's been covering the protests at the different universities in New York City and was at Columbia University earlier this week. We asked him whether what he saw resembled what was described by the outgoing speaker. We've seen news reports almost wall-to-wall that characterize the students there in the encampments as being violent, being anti-Semitic, hostile in the face of Jewish students, intimidating, and worse. What have you seen while you were there?
Well, I've been to the protests at Columbia. I was there on Monday, and I was also there on Wednesday. And what I saw was that the majority of the students protesting in support of Palestine were Jewish. I mean, the overwhelming majority of people there were students that were Jewish, that were involved in social justice, had kind of a liberal perspective. There were older peace activists who were also Jewish, who had been part of the anti-Vietnam War movement and were there to support the students. And I didn't hear any chanting against Jews. I did not hear any hostility toward Jews on an ethnic basis. I did hear anti-Israel sentiment in opposition to what Israel's doing. But the idea that this was somehow, some kind of, campus pogrom, which is what is being put out. I mean, I just didn't see that.
The Speaker of the House and a group of congressional colleagues were at Columbia on Wednesday. And he, in essence, sounded like he and Mike Lawler, who is from the 17th District in New York, seemed to be telling Columbia University that unless you fire the president, the one that they're all ganging up on, that it's going to affect your federal funding, which sounded like blackmail to me, frankly. But how is this being received there?
Well, I mean, the president of the college is herself a target of the protesters. They feel that she has been hostile to them. She's been taking action against them that is unappreciated and she's not an ally or a friend of these protesters. But it seems like the demand on the part of the Republicans is they want, the free speech of these pro-Palestine students to just be completely taken away. Because, already there's been students suspended, kicked out of their dorms. They've locked down Columbia University's campus. You can't go in unless you have a student ID. There's been a whole lot of, of repression and curtailing of these students' rights to continue speaking out. So I guess that's just not enough for Mike Johnson and for some of the voices. They just want all these students to be just completely crushed. I guess it's just not enough to see people suspended, to see the campus locked down, to see condemnations coming from the president, pro-Israeli statements. One thing that I noticed when I was there is that the doors of Columbia University, the gate, was decorated with white and blue balloons. And some people said, well, those are the school colors. Well, those are also the colors of the Israeli flag. They were making a pretty clear political statement by decorating the gate that way. And the campus has been pretty solidly pro-Israel and has been pretty hostile to these students doing what they're doing. But I guess it's not enough, according to Mike Johnson.
So it is curious that the press conference that he held yesterday, there were 5 Republicans only. And we didn't see Schumer, who's the New York senator, who's one of the, I would say, maybe the biggest supporter and funder of Israel in the whole Congress, or any of the other Democrats who are strong supporters of Israel. How are they trying to make electoral political hay out of this thing when they're all on the same side?
Well, here's the thing, and I guess this is some of the deeper analysis, but if you read Zbigniew Brzezinski in his book, The Grand Chessboard, This was, it comes out of Columbia University, the School of International Studies. It used to be the Center for Communist Studies, one of the main strategists of the late Cold War period in the United States. He begins his book by talking about Ivy League schools and how important they are because they play an international role. Students from all over the world come to Harvard and Yale and Columbia and schools like that, Princeton, et cetera, and they get an impression of the United States while they're there. And they learn that the United States is very inclusive. They make business connections that connect them with American corporations, et cetera. And that these schools, they play a very international purpose rather than just a domestic one. And people don't realize that. It's not something you would think about, right? You think people just go to college to get their degree, but it actually plays a very important, international relations role for American imperialism. And so part of what makes these schools important and part of, having them do their job is that students from the Middle East and students from Africa and Asia need to come there and see that in America, look, we have room for Muslims. We have room for people that are critical of Israel. We have room for people that don't agree with American foreign policy, and if you're from a Muslim country, you can do business with America. And even though America funds Israel, well, we'll do business with you too. And, we respect your opinion. So it's almost important for American imperialism to have anti-Israeli protests taking place on these campuses in order to, keep their relationship with the Muslim world, et cetera. However, right now, the Israel lobby and the forces that are tied in with the Likud party and the hard right in Israel are so vulnerable, and they are so, at this point, unwilling to accept any criticism and so on the defensive. That they don't see the value in having that. They're not thinking strategically long term about how the United States can continue to dominate the world, et cetera. They're thinking short term about how Israel is being widely condemned, almost universally condemned outside of the Western world for what it's doing. And they don't want any attention drawn to that. So we have a difference of interests. We have the short-term interests of the hard Israeli right wing, and we have the long-term interests of American imperialism. And I think that that's what the fight is really about. I don't think Chuck Schumer agrees with these students at all, but he probably is closer to the intelligence apparatus that thinks it's strategic to have them there. Whereas the hard right says, no, we don't want any criticism of Israel and is seeing Israel as in a vulnerable position right now and doesn't want attention drawn to the crimes that Israel is committing in Gaza.
The accusations of violence and hate speech by protesters against Jewish students at Columbia and elsewhere have been accompanied by a call from several members of Congress and other public figures to introduce police and even the National Guard to quell the protests. Laurel Krause is co-founder of the Kent State Truth Tribunal and the Allison Center for Peace in California. Laurel's sister, Allison Krause, was shot and killed by the National Guard at a protest May 4th, 1970, at Kent State University in Ohio. We asked her what she thought about the idea of introducing militarized police and or the National Guard to college campuses.
Well, when you introduce the National Guard, only horrible things can happen. As I learned, my sister Allison Krause was one of 4 students killed at Kent State in May of 1970. In that situation, she was protesting against the Vietnam War and Cambodian invasion. And they introduced the National Guard in pretty early into the debacle. It was actually a war event that happened, on a campus in America in 1970 that not many people are aware of because it's been covered up pretty much. Aside from that, it's a very bad choice to bring militarized police into a college campus. College campuses are supposed to be places of higher learning with free expression and the right to protest. And for some reason in 2024, that's not possible when we protest against genocide or when those student protesters are. And so they're being turned into the enemy. And that's the situation right now.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.